really?
A lot of people say that.
Yeah, right, okay. We all good to go? Thanks, Michelle. Who's here for the first time? Yeah, all right, okay, cool. Returning people, how does this time for you? Because sometimes we do it late afternoon, don't we? Is this time morning, afternoon? What do you think? No one? Afternoon? Late afternoon, yeah? Because there's beer, that's why. Yeah. Isn't it? Yeah. Right, so we've got Nicky Homes and Gary Wright with us today. Commercial Director, Chief Operating Officer. Yeah. Good stuff. Who's actually ran one of the Great Run events, by the way? Yeah? I think we need to do a bit of work, don't we? Yeah. How about, I was going to say, tell me about a typical day, but that's probably not a thing, is it? Because you've got events from the top to the bottom of the UK.
Yes.
So how about you just tell us a little bit about yourselves, your role maybe? Is that okay?
Yes. Shall I go first?
Yeah.
So I'm Nicky Homes. My responsibility at the Great Run Company is the majority of the commercial income streams. So I'm responsible for all the relationships we have with our sponsors, our commercial partners, merchandising, and our relationships with our very important local authority partnerships, because of course, unless we can close the roads, we can't actually deliver the events at all. So that's my area of expertise.
And I'm Gary Wright. I'm Chief Operating Officer. So I fundamentally look after pretty much everything that Nicky doesn't. So I cover, my background is finance, so I cover the finances. I also look after the operational side of the business. I have responsibility for the IT, for the project management, and things like the customer services. So quite a wide remit.
Gary orders the t-shirts.
Ah, right, okay.
I don't physically order t-shirts. I tend to say, not sure I want to spend that, but yeah. So, yeah, t-shirts are my responsibility.
Do you both work from home then?
No.
You're based in Gateshead, is it? Is the Great Run, or?
I am.
Right.
I'm actually based in London.
Right.
I think a decision that the Great Run Company or Brendan Foster took about 15 years ago when I joined was that the majority of the big brands that you need to target to generate the income are based down in the south, sadly.
Right.
I'm based down there, although I'm up here every 2 weeks for a couple of days.
Right.
But yes, we work from home. I work from home now.
Yeah.
I'm based in the northeast. So
Yeah.
I work out the Gateshead office. We moved there about a year and a half ago now.
Actually, we had a Zoom, and you, on the back of your wall, you had all the older T-shirts, and you, like 1982 and things, and clearly you didn't run that.
No. I
No.
was 2 years old then, I think. But no, we've part of when we did the new building was to sort of pull out the heritage and things.
Yeah.
Because I guess we moved in post-COVID, and the sort of COVID period was clearly a challenge for mass participation events. And I think there was kind of a feeling within the business of Great Run 2.0 kind of thing.
Yeah.
It was a new sort of start. We'd made some changes. And we were just really keen when we moved into the building to demonstrate where we've come from. So there's a lot of artifacts.
Ray's got one of those artifacts, actually.
We're not quite that old, artifacts. But there's quite a lot of memorabilia and stuff around the office. And yeah, when we cleared the old office, there was so much stuff, and we had all the old T-shirts from day one. So yeah, I quite fancied a sort of wall display.
Yeah, it's cool.
I'm going to say all the good ones, but they're all the 80s ones were a bit cooler. They were made by
Yeah,
Nicky and they were pretty
definitely.
good. So, yeah,
It's funny, like back in the day, you could actually run it, couldn't you? Like, kids could run it before they changed the minimum age.
Yeah, there's we made a film last year. Actually, there's a second side to the business which a lot of people probably aren't aware of, called Film Nova. So, and we've also obviously got Film Nova staff in London and in the northeast. And we made a film last year about the run and 40 years of it and how the region had changed through the period. And there was quite a nice piece in there with the name will escape me, but it was a kid who did it. I'm going to say he ran it. He was dragged around, I think, by his mum.
Yeah.
But his mum's no longer with us and stuff, and he ran it again and stuff.
Yeah.
It was a really nice piece of the film.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's quite a few people have run they call them the All 40 Club, because there's a sort of group of people who run all the events.
Oh, right.
And they're very proud of all their T-shirts.
Yeah, yeah,
It's nice to have something.
yeah. So how many events is there now?
All in all, you put me on the spot.
I think there's 30, if you count just the weekend, so all the different events that happen, I think there's, it's about 12 in total, isn't it?
Counting the kids and stuff.
Right.
So we're in Glasgow, Manchester, Portsmouth, Birmingham,
Bristol.
And then we've got a swim in Windermere, which is this weekend.
I saw that. I fancy. Anyone? Is anyone doing that? Is anyone doing that?
Fancy taking part in it?
Is it? It's wetsuits, fine. Yeah.
Yeah, anything 250 metres to 10 kilometres is the swim,
Yeah.
and then we're also now moving into some ultra running events.
Right.
So we have a new event in the 13 valleys in the Lake District,
Yeah.
which is anything from I think about 60k up to 180k for really hardcore
Yeah.
ultra runners. And yeah, that's which is I think one of the areas that we're seeing growing in popularity, albeit from a small base,
Yeah.
is the longer distances, the post-marathon
Yeah.
type distances.
So that's interesting. You say like Great Run 2.0 was that part of the strategy about, look, we've got to keep moving. Things like adventure kind of, those kind of total warrior sort of styles. Is that something you're thinking about as well, or?
Yeah, I mean, we've dabbled in that in the past,
Right.
I think. And I think you've got to be very, I want to say careful with some of those events. I think they
Okay.
can peak and
Yeah.
move on quite quickly. But, our view was there is definitely a movement of people who are seeking a greater challenge. And it's not necessarily always Tough Mudder and those sorts of events, which are great, but there are people who aren't quite after that level of challenge, like that, or the Sparta, for example. And they're looking for longer distances.
Yeah.
And the 13 Valleys, the genesis of it was a conversation between our chief executive, Paul Foster, who's Brendan's son, and the chief executive of Lake District National Park, to say they were talking about the UTMB, which is a big race in Chamonix, Ultra Tour de Mont Blanc. And the conversation was, why doesn't the UK have something like that? Because there's a big trail running community in the UK, it's growing. And the Lake District is the optimum place to have it. So we've partnered with Lake District National Park to promote, there's 13 valleys in the Lake District. And there will ultimately be a walking route around the 13 valleys, which will be owned and managed by Lake District National Park. And we've got involved to effectively start to promote that idea, put a trail run on it to sort of build it up. And I think, as I was talking about what I was saying, there's a movement in the UK of people who want that more, and we're just sort of venturing into that trail space now. I think we have one. We've tried a couple. We've got one called Ultra London, which is there's a walkway around London called the Capital Ring, which you can walk, theoretically you can walk the whole way around London. So we do a trail on that for people, and we've done one in the north as well called Ultra North, funnily enough, which sort of comes through Newcastle, Gateshead, and Durham. So there's definitely a movement of people towards that. I guess we're just sort of encouraging that movement.
I think it's interesting as well because the economic impact of those, so, going to Lake District, they'll be well up for that. Do you want to talk us a little bit about economic impact where you have races? Have you got any figures for us or stats? Or?
Yeah, so the last time we've had a proper survey done, I'm talking about the Great North Run weekend here, was 2019. Because obviously 20 was COVID, when we didn't do anything. 21 then was when we reversed the race back to Newcastle. So Nicky might confirm, but I think there's plans to do it again this year, because we've kind of got a static year again where it's comparable. But in 2019, the economic impact of the North Run weekend for the North East was valued at £32 million. Of which 10 million of that comes from, and I think this is the important point, 10 million of that comes from people from outside the region. And then we look at how likely they are to come back, what they think of the region, whether they've visited before, etc., etc. So there is a significant, and that's putting aside the sort of charity impact of it. That's the pure economic impact on hotel rooms, eating out, taxi rides, everything. The research which we had suggests that the spectators who come with with participants from outside the region, spend on average a couple £100 each, which again is predominantly in hospitality and things like that. And equally then you get the spend from the participants from the North East, the spectators who come out to support. So it's important that the argument that we made during COVID to the government and various other funding sources was the impact of the race is not just on us alone, it's on the wider region, and therefore that's what has to be considered when we were discussing support, etc., etc. So it's, we're very proud of it. I think there's a lot to be said for events like this which come into a city or a region and can help not just the event organizer but help the wider region.
Yeah. One of my friends, he stays in Hartlepool in the bus in. So I'd imagine it is sort of spread
but
the impact.
35 to 38% I think of people who stay in the south of the region.
Right.
Yes, there's a lot that stay in sort of Newcastle Gateshead because there's a sort of proliferation of hotel rooms and they use university accommodation and what have you as well. But yeah, 35 to 38%.
Yeah.
We come in, stay outside the city.
Yeah.
I've got friends myself.
Yeah. So obviously we've got a big park, the after party and the marquees and all that. Is that more your role, Nicky,
Yes,
where you've got
that's part of, well, obviously not operationally, that's more Gary's team.
but relationship-wise, pulling people in.
Yeah, my areas sort of, particularly over the weekend, actually are making sure that all the sponsors and partners who get to, they spend money sponsoring the event because they want to be able to talk to the 60,000 people that have taken part. And so that's quite an important element. And this year, we're working actually with a new provider to deliver, I think, hopefully what will be a sort of a broader range of concessions within the actual village. So I think maybe the company that we've worked with for many years, it was a little bit too much sort of burgers and chips, whereas this year I think if you're on the finishes, you'd expect to see maybe a few more healthy options at the site, which is good. And I think we've moved the charity village away from, those of you who are familiar with the site, I think we had it in the sort of Gypsies Green sort of area for quite a long time. We've moved that out further away into a new green sort of area site, which means that a lot more people can sort of hang around within that charity village. And I think our aim again is to try and get people to stay a little bit longer and enjoy the things that the charities have to offer, and then actually maybe try to avoid causing such the crush that we obviously see at the metro with people waiting to get back on. And I think we recognise that it's really important to work with the business community to try and get people to stay in the area for a bit longer. I personally don't think you're going to get runners to, stay around until midnight, and they're not going to, a lot of research that we have shows that people don't really want to hang around and listen to a concert after they've run a half marathon. But I think what we can do is get them to stay for a couple of hours longer and maybe to, eat in the area or spend longer in the area spending their money, which is why we're here. Really, we're quite keen to understand from you guys who own businesses in the area what else we can do to help with that.
Where do you get that intel from? Do you speak to businesses or runners or what?
I mean, we do a lot of research via sort of post-event questionnaires, asking questions about how long people would stay. I think the reason I have it's a bit of a gut feeling that I know people wouldn't stay around for a concert. I think we've witnessed a lot of other event operators trying to mix mass participation running with music festivals, and none of them have been particularly successful so far. So I think generally you do find that if you've just run a half marathon, you maybe don't want to stay around and watch, a big music festival.
Depends how good it is.
I guess it depends how good it is. And never say never, but we're definitely not doing that for the next couple of years.
Yeah.
So for now, I think our key objective is to try and make people stay in the area a little bit longer via other means.
Yeah, I think it's quite interesting. It depends on the activity as well. So we've got an event this weekend in the Lakes, which is an open water swim in Windermere. And it tends to have a bit more of a festival feel, because people come for the day, they bring picnics, they come with their family, and I think with a swim it's slightly different. There is more opportunity for people to stay. I think there's a middle ground for a run. I think, as Nicky said, we're probably not going to be able to encourage people to stay till midnight, but we think we can work with the businesses locally to encourage people to stay a lot longer. I was making the point earlier that I think that the crux of it is that point between when they pick up their pack and maybe have a beer and meet their family again, to when they actually get in the metro queue or get in the ferry queue or get for the... Once you're in the queue, you're in the queue, and you're done. Whereas it's that sort of, how can we work together to sort of slow it down a little bit and encourage it. I mean, for my sins, I'm a Man United fan. I went to the cup final at the weekend and left quite early. But we went and stopped and had food because the tube was so busy. And it's the same sort of mentality of, I don't want to get on the tube with everybody, I want to do something.
Yeah.
You know? And around Wembley was very well set up for that sort of thing. So I think it's the same idea. We'd like to work with businesses in the area to say, look, we can encourage the people to do certain actions, but what is it we can do together to sort of slow down that people leaving, if I'm honest.
Yeah, well, that's a great point. Why don't we ask? Why don't we get some feedback? So, Carl, I saw you. Hang on 2 seconds, Carl. We're going to give you a mic. So people, I know. So people at home, why don't you give a plug, Carl, where you're from? And then people at home can listen as well. So if anyone's watching at home, we can receive some comments and we'll pick them up.
Hi, I'm Carl Buckley from urbanriver.com. We're a branding and website design agency. My question is, do you think the fact that the run happens on a Sunday, being at the end of a weekend, I know a lot of obviously runners tend to take Mondays off, but particularly if you've got a lot of travellers from outside of the region, you know, they're wanting to get the run, get packed up and get back home, rather than perhaps if it was on a Saturday and it's a bit more of that whole kind of festival type weekend where they've got another day ahead of them?
That's a good question, actually. Possibly. Yeah, I mean, that's a good question.
Should we ask the local authority whether we can shut roads?
It's one we've never researched because we know we wouldn't be allowed to get the road closures on the Saturday for the Great North Run. But
I think the issue that we've got, I think it's joking around, but I think it's a really strong point. I think you're right. I guess to try and change the whole weekend would be really challenging. We've got, whilst it doesn't impact so much, I guess, in South Tyneside. On the Saturday, we've got it's the biggest kids run in the world. On the Saturday, which takes an awful lot of manpower, and typically as well, it used to be for television. So the Saturday was always televised as well when we did the City Games, etc. And then obviously the Sunday morning slot with the BBC is quite a. It's very important to keep that slot, shall we say? I mean, the part of the elevation of the event. Is the fact that it's still on television, and that that's encouraging for commercial income, but it just elevates the event. It's what part of what gives the Great North Run its USP. You know, there are a lot of half marathons out there, but there are very few which have, I would argue, that sort of essence of something that you can't quite put your finger on.
Yeah.
And some of that comes from the popularity, which is driven by the TV, etc. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have we got any other businesses in the room that might have some ideas on how they might engage? I'm looking at you right here. Engage with Great Run. Anyone want to throw anything out at this point?
You're your own sort of media team though for Nova to make films, yeah?
Yeah. So we've we've got TV production arm. A lot of them are ex-BBC. And when you see our event on TV, we've actually done all the filming, and then we sell the rights to the BBC. But probably in the last 5 years, fair to say, Nicky, we've moved away from just filming our own events, and we now do quite a lot of work outside of the region as well. So we do a lot of work for UEFA, and we did some stuff for FIFA. We made the World Cup film, the official World Cup film for FIFA this year. And we do a lot of work with triathlon. So we film a lot of triathlon for World Triathlon, Professional Triathlon Organisation. We filmed the boat race, the Cambridge Oxford boat race. We did that. So there's a big bit of the business that we never have really talked about particularly. But that's a bit of the business which is just growing as well. So.
Kelvin's got a question, and Ray, I'll bring you in after Kelvin at the back there, yeah? Is that okay?
Hello. Question I have is basically that the Great North Run obviously is the biggest half marathon in the world. But do you think there's any sort of scope for extending it to older people as a specialist race, like you have a children's race and you have the main race? Have you ever thought about maybe doing it for a shorter race for maybe the over 60s on the same route, or a less route, maybe 6 or 7 miles instead of the full half mile, the full half marathon? Because I think that would attract a lot more people and perhaps a lot more sponsorship from those older people. I mean, I'm turning nearly 40 now, Ian. So, so that really was the question. So perhaps maybe you can have a think about that. And
It's actually a really good point, because I think our industry, which is mass participation sport, it focuses a lot on what to do for younger people. There's a huge amount of conversations about what to do for the 18 to 20s and what do Gen Z want at the moment. And yet actually I keep on saying internally we need to think about the older generation, because actually a lot of them are the ones that have been running consistently for the last sort of 20 years, but as they get into their 60s and 70s might not want to still do a half marathon. And so actually it's a good point, and I'm glad you raised it. We have always had a 5K on the Newcastle Quayside on the Saturday when we have the Mini and Junior. We've changed that for this year to be on the Friday evening, and we're trying to get that up from what was about 1,000 people to probably sort of 3,000 or 4,000 people doing that loop of the Newcastle Quayside. I think it's something that we should definitely be looking at in terms of not necessarily even not a half marathon or not a challenge, just something that that you want to do as you get older, maybe again like running on softer pavements or something. But yeah, I think it's a really good point and something that we will be looking at.
okay, one other point as well. Clearly, there were many reasons behind having to change the route of the Great North Run. I believe just post-COVID.
Yeah.
Is it back to finish at South Shields now permanently, or is that going to be changed in the future?
There's no plans to change anything again. I mean, as you've alluded, there was a myriad of reasons why we did it. Honestly, some which were understood, some which weren't understood, which is always going to be the case.
So it wasn't a political decision.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Thank you.
So it was quite a challenging time, shall we say? And I think a lot of it came, just to briefly explain, a lot of it came down to the movement of people and basically how you could move so many people at that time safely and appropriately. It took an awful lot of planning to turn it around in quite a short period. And I guess we understood if we're being candid, we got mixed responses. Some people were very angry that we'd moved it, and some people understood, and I get that. But we always have to be in a position as well where if anything like that happens again, I now know there's a plan B and we can work with it. And we worked really closely through that entire year with the local authority, with Nexus, with the hospitals, with the police, to sort of make sure we could do what was the right thing. And I think we took the view, and I accept that it was a challenge in South Tyneside that year for a lot of businesses in what was already a very difficult time. But we took the view that the race had to continue. It had to go ahead because the charity impact was significant. The economic impact was still significant, albeit it was a smaller race that year. And being frank about it, we've got our own organisation as well, and we've got people's livelihoods, etc., etc. So it was important, really important, that the event went ahead. But no, you know, it's the, I was going to say traditional route, but I'm from Northern Ireland, that's got different connotations. But it's where we've always been, yeah. So, you know, it's the iconic route. It goes from Newcastle to South Shields. That's what it does, you know. So, look, I'm never going to say that circumstances won't happen again, that we'd have to make that decision, but I could tell you now there's no plans to do it.
Thank you. I think Ray had a question.
I'm Ray Spencer from the Customs House, which is a theatre and cinema. I have a love-hate relationship with the Great North Run. I love being involved. I love being involved in it. It absolutely kills any trade on the day for our business because the car park is full from 6 o'clock in the morning of people who aren't coming to the theatre or the cinema. And then after the race, it becomes one of the largest public toilets for everybody who's been to the race going to the ferry. So that's the hate bit. Yeah. But the great bit is we sell so much drink and food for the people who are standing for 2 hours waiting to get on the ferry. So I think that's won't be dissimilar for lots of people who aren't on the seafront, that were a bit further away from it. But the year it didn't happen in South Shields, it was like a death in the family. I mean, we really took it personally, people in South Tyneside, because we feel it's ours as much as it's yours and Nova's and Great North Run. We feel, the Sandancers feel, it's very much ours, as I'm sure the people in Gateshead do as well. But South Tyneside, it's our big day on the telly, and people across the world will send you messages and say, I saw you on the telly. You know, so it's really important. So long may it continue, but it is a love-hate relationship. If you live I live in Beach Road, forget about moving your car on Great North Run Day. So, yeah.
I get that. I think it's, and you know what, it's interesting to hear that face-to-face, because, I mean, that was part of the sort of genesis of this, was we want to hear what you guys have got to say, you know, both in the room and online, because sometimes we only hear from the people who are the most vocal, and that's not necessarily always a cross-section of what it is. So, you know, if there's stuff that we can do to work with you to make that experience better, then I'm happy to have that conversation. You know, but equally, I appreciate that you recognise the benefits that come from it as well. You know, and we're definitely not here to make anybody's life more difficult, but we're here to hopefully make everyone's life a little bit better in whatever way. But I appreciate the candor.
Yeah, we want it to be yours as well. That's that's the ethos of the Great Run Company. We go and put events into cities, and we want them to feel the ownership of those events. So the Great North Run is about the North East, so the Great Manchester Run is about the people of Manchester in the same way.
I think there's a thing that as well, and it's interesting you said that you own it, because, and I've said this a couple of times internally, like that you have an event which has existed for 40 years, and eventually you don't really own it anymore, you become the custodians of it. And I think it sounds very twee, but you get the point. And I think that for a region like the North East, which consistently punches above its weight, I think it's really important that it keeps events like the Great North Run, you know, even things like Magic Weekend, which I appreciate it was in Newcastle the weekend, but those sorts of events need to come to the North East, because we do a lot of work across the country, and it's easy for the North East to be forgotten. You know? So I think that sense of ownership is really important, because it means that everyone who's involved in the race in any way is pulling together to keep it at the forefront of thought. You know, and the region needs more like that, if I'm totally honest. Personal view. But.
Yeah, we'll come to you in a second. We've got a question from...
Hi, Victoria Thompson from Karma Life. I have a company, a yoga and wellness company in South Tyneside. I know a lot of the questions have been based on hospitality in South Tyneside and try and keep everyone here. My thoughts would be about like wellness and about like supporting mental health and physical health after the Great North Run. That's something that I would like to be involved in, and obviously other companies as well. Is that something that would be a possibility that we could look at the end of the Great North Run?
For those businesses who obviously aren't in hospitality and can't encourage people to come and benefit from the economic impact on the day, we started a programme last year, but we started it quite late, so we want to build upon it for this year, which is what we call Runners Rewards. So the idea is that anyone who's finished the Great North Run can either attend your business or enter an online promotion that would enable them to either get a discount or money off, or if you don't want to offer a discount, it's up to you. But we can promote that on the website, and we would promote in emails that any finisher can click here to go to a page on the website to find out about the local businesses in the area, which might be of use for the theatre or for businesses like yourself. So we'll be getting that up and running in the next couple of weeks, and just all you need to do is send in any offer or just a promotion about your business, and we'll hold that on the website.
Brilliant. Just behind you there, Misha.
Hello, my name is Michael. I did the Great North Run last in 2018, my sins, prior to COVID, the before times. We actually thought it would be clever and walk along to a pub called the Harbour Lights, thinking the crowd will die down by the time we finish our meal. And yeah, we ended up walking halfway home actually. But I think the idea you've mentioned there about local businesses offering a discount is excellent. I'd love to promote that. The other question I had really was about the timing. Obviously we have started getting more and more extreme weather, and I know that quite often it gets really warm and dangerously so. Have you considered about moving it? Obviously bringing it forward might be dangerous or being warmer, but then pushing it back might actually affect the sort of post-race economic boost. Have you considered that in your future plans?
Yeah, we do. We talk about weather more than you'd actually believe. And yeah, it is getting warmer, and we do talk about moving it around. Because the original one was obviously at the end of June, back in the A1. A lot of it historically, my understanding was to do with the finish of the athletic season, and when it was then possible to get elite athletes where they are in the training cycle, et cetera, et cetera. So that was kind of the genesis of the September period. We do discuss it. Honestly, there are no plans at the minute to move it. I think it does get challenging later in the year for events because you lose the light, et cetera, et cetera. And you know, it's as challenging post-race when it's cold as it is when it's warm. So no, in answer to your question, we do consider it, but we haven't got any current plans. But
Misha, just at the front here. And it must have been hell in the Harbour Lights anyway, was it? I really feel your pain.
Bernard Sparks from the Auxilium Society. Obviously, I'm not a runner, but being a person that's disabled with limited mobility, I love to come and spectate. But the trouble with anybody who does have mobility issues or anything is getting from any public transport down to anywhere you can view. Have you any thoughts of potentially laying on, specialist transport or some buses that could, cope for people and making it more accessible? Because people won't come just because of that.
we currently, it sounds like a politician's answer, but one of the things that we're focusing on in the business at the minute is ED&I, and we've got two sort of tranches going on at the minute, which is ED&I and sustainability, and we're looking at a lot of different areas in that. What I would say at the minute is we haven't, I'll take your point back, it's not something, if I'm honest, that's been expressed to us that much before, but we'll take it back and look at it as part of that process.
Thanks.
Sorry, that's a bit of a nothing answer.
I think it's something that I hadn't really thought that much of, and it's actually a really good point. And it would just be, would you have any thoughts on would there be an organisation for residents that we could work with, or would it just, I'm just trying to think how we would communicate if we created an opportunity, how would we then...
I'm not sure whether you've just read it, but people who've got mobility issues who want to come and spectate, and especially even older people from families of the runners and so on, it literally is a case of, do you know what, we're not even going to try and attempt to walk from one end of the town to the other because they just can't get through.
Yeah, it's a really good point. We'll add it to the things to consider.
Thanks, Bernard. Did you ever, was it, Just behind Mike there, Misha.
I'm Chris Pickering. I've got the Criterion and Gone In, 2 hospitality businesses in South Shields, and we've also got our One Community, which is a youth and community-based organisation. So for me, it's a question around the movement of people. So on Great North Run Day, a lot of people come to South Shields. A lot of it is based down at the seafront, and a lot of businesses further up don't get to see any benefit from that. Is there anything that can be done, or is there thoughts around how we move people further throughout the street? Is there any more cluster points where we could have big screens, maybe on the market? How do we utilise the marketplace? How do we generate little magic moments throughout the town? What entices people to stop, grab a drink, have a bite to eat? And is there anything where, so I've mentioned as well our One Community, we work with Spotlight, which is a programme that supports young artists under the age of 25. And I know you said you weren't interested in music being at events, but it's basically for young people with music running through the veins. Is there a way that you could look at how you support young people who are interested in that throughout the town to bring a bit of music and a bit of art to be able to generate people to stay throughout the town centre as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I say I didn't mean we weren't interested in music at all. It's just not a massive concert with a headliner sort of type music. But yeah, I mean, that sounds like there's huge opportunities there, and whether it be actually we have music points along the course if they'd like to be involved in that, or the idea of having something in the town centre is something that we could work with the council on.
Yeah, I think that's part of the conversation that we wanted to have today was, you know, we need your help a little bit as well to tell us what those sorts of things are, and then we can help to facilitate the movement of people. So we're sort of very cognizant of the fact that I can't tell you what that point is, but if we can work with the businesses in the region, then you can say, look, if this would be an optimum place, what can you do to help us move the people up there? Because we obviously have a platform to speak to 60,000 runners and 150,000 spectators. So, you know, if the ideas are there, I'm more than happy to work with you guys to facilitate that sort of thing. And like I said before, in my view, it's the slowing up of the exodus, I suppose, which would benefit. And I take your point. There's a very well-worn route of people from the finish to the metro or to the ferry or buses. So I appreciate that there will be bits of the time where we need to actively draw people. But happy to listen to any ideas. We'll get you details afterwards, and we can talk about the youth and community side of it. More than happy to have conversations.
I think that's a great point about we need to get involved. We need to put some ideas in the magic moments piece. I helped you out last year because I consumed one of your cheese boards at the Criterion. Awesome. So yeah, I did make it up to you actually. So well done.
Sorry, I was just saying, I think there's another point there, just in terms of the people who aren't from the region. They won't see these sorts of things. You know what I mean? So they're already encouraged. I mean, the research shows that those who come are more encouraged to come back. There's a lot of people who've never been to the North East before. You know, they come for the run and then they've never been to Shields, that sort of thing. So it's important to sort of draw them to see a bit more of it as well. You know, and I think whether that be the Customs House or whether it be sort of your businesses further out, I think the more of the borough that you can show them, the more likely they are to come back again. And it is a beautiful finish, but that's not all that it's about.
Brilliant. Carl, did you have a question?
Just building on that point, excuse me, and this is not just down to the Great North Run Company, because I think the local authority and the businesses alike have got to sort of sign up to it. But in terms of making something happen a little bit more in the town, it was quite interesting. I was personally involved in the Rugby League World Cup, and whilst, excuse me, in Newcastle, obviously people are coming to Newcastle to go to St James's Park to watch a game, but there was a bit of preamble before where there were a number of activities, there were a number of small stages where one was a drama, one was a dance, one was a singing. I was involved in the singing, God help everybody. But what was quite good is that being put on because, again, a lot of people were travelling to Newcastle Central Station, and then there was a route way to St James's Park. So along that way, they had screens and they had, there was activity for people to engage in. In the case of the Rugby League World Cup, it was all related to rugby league, but looking at things like music and stuff. And I absolutely take the point about having a big, event at the end of the day. This is not an F1 Grand Prix sort of thing where there's a defined captive audience. Obviously, the thing with the run, different people are finishing at different times as well, and we've got to accept there's a big stagger there. But I think that there could be something that could be, put on, because there is that walkway back through the town where people could engage both ways, and that could be a bit of music, and I think that would give it a little bit of a festival vibe, not necessarily sitting down and watching something for a couple of hours that happens in the park, but if you just had, an opportunities for people to be able to do different things. Be a good idea, for the youngsters at the Customs House to be able to put on some entertainment as well. Perhaps, again, think about having a street food market, all these sorts of things. But I just know that worked really well. I mean, as I say, at the rugby, there were lots and lots and lots of people engaging with it, but it wasn't a big massive organised thing. Even just a couple of street bands bashing drums and stuff gives that whole kind of atmosphere and that bit of a party vibe, if you like.
So that's not the fan zone on the quayside you're talking about, is it? You're talking about on the route to
I am actually where do you know where Helix and all around there, sort of all that new development. There were a number of sort of stages around there and a number of different things that had gone on. I mean, I know that was probably very big budget, and and I think that there was a dance thing that were brought in and stuff. But it was, it was good. It was kind of just music, sound, dance, and it gives that third dimension, doesn't it, to sort of G people up, if you like. And obviously, people want to get to the event. I mean, I know it's clearly the spectators, they want to be there a little bit earlier, but it gives them something to sort of engage with. I would imagine people that are coming to want to come to the end, they sort of want to get there early, and then it's like, all right, what do we do now? And there's a lot of waiting around. And I think it's a bit of an added dimension for people to do that a little bit. It's a good way of, again, South Shields being able to showcase itself to a lot of people.
I think that's exactly what we're talking about. I think it's about that engagement with not just the business community locally, but the community locally in the wider sense, to showcase the area. And I think that I would say that the relationship that we have with the local authority is probably as good as it's ever been. And that's not to say that it was bad in the past, but there's a very strong sense of will on both sides to try and do this. I think the COVID year sort of demonstrated to the local authority that the importance of the event, but also demonstrated to us the strength of feeling about the event. And I think that's probably been the prompt for a really push on a really strong relationship, because as Nicky alluded to before, the events don't happen in the cities unless we've got the support of the local authority, but also the residents and the communities. Because I accept, we're a pain in the arse for a period of time. I get that. Fully accept. So it's important that we have this dialogue. So what you've described there is absolutely what we should be encouraging and trying to do. And I think, you tend to get a little bit more of that at the start in Newcastle, because everyone's basically heading to the one spot for a certain time, whereas what we've got at the finish is people sort of dissipating at different times, as you say. Some people run the event and keep running to the metro, something like that. Some meet their families, etc., etc. So, the point I'm making is there is huge opportunity there, and I think I'm encouraged that we've got this dialogue today, because that's exactly what I wanted to hear.
Nicky, you're going to be up and down from London because you've got a steering group here, I think. Wow.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Nicky loves the North.
Yeah, of course she does.
I do.
Bernard, did you want to come in?
Yeah, as a company that obviously operates nationally, do you have a clear policy to commit to buying a certain percentage of your products, services, and everything you use and engage in the event from the local companies?
It wouldn't be a policy as such, but it fundamentally works out that way, if I'm honest, because, I mean, with the exception of things like merchandise, etc., which obviously get purchased abroad and brought in. But
Any reason why?
price and availability, if I'm totally honest.
One of my businesses is a manufacturer of a games company, and we have made the clear decision to have it made locally in Gospers. And the price difference wasn't actually that much, and we found that people are actually more interested in buying it because it's made in the UK.
Yeah. I think there's a whole, I mentioned the sustainability piece before, so there's a whole sort of second argument and discussion to be had around what we give away, etc., etc. But in answer to your original question, the vast majority of stuff we do tend to get locally if we can. The relationships, when you operate in these different cities, the relationship you have with the suppliers is key, you know. And for example, you know, I'm just double checking what I'm saying here, but we're unlikely to take a transport company, like a traffic management company, from the northeast to Portsmouth to do that. You know what I mean? So you naturally fall into those things. When it comes to things like medical support, again, it's local. So almost by default, a large proportion of what we spend is local, and you know, it's not a stated policy as such.
Thanks.
You should just behind there, Katie, next to Carl.
Hi, my name's Katie Buckley and I'm from the Tax Angel, which is a tax consultancy business, newly started. Listening to everybody here, it seems that I think what we're trying to get people to do is obviously engage in the area of South Tyneside and also the wider region. But it seems to me from everything that's said that after the race, it almost feels like everything sort of drops off a cliff, all the activities, and people just want to sort of, I know you were saying you didn't want to do a concert or anything like that. People are just absolutely exhausted and they basically want to go home. But is there anything to try and sort of extend it beyond the race, say onto the Monday, have some sort of activities or concert or kids activities, not necessarily running, but sort of family activities? Because I know a lot of families like to sort of go away, and if they say the dad's into running, they'll sort of go along with him, and then they maybe extend it, do like some camping weekends or hotel stays. So if you could sort of promote, and obviously you're saying about wanting to use services of local businesses, but as you say, it's all geared towards arriving on the Friday, getting ready for the race, running the race, and then bang, going home. To sort of take it beyond that, so promote camping sites, maybe potentially discounted hotel packages, as well as discounted other activities, and to try to bring together sort of, I don't know, theatre groups, music venues, hotels, camping venues, and really try and sort of push it so that people don't just see it as coming for the race, bang, going home. There's a reason for them to stay, and then obviously on the Monday or the Tuesday, they're going to be more likely to engage with local businesses or go around and visit the wider sort of Northumberland as well.
Yeah. I think we've extended the weekend previously, but we've extended it to the Friday rather than to the Monday, which I think was a recognition of the fact that, to take your point, a lot of people do want to leave again on the Sunday night. It's something that we're more than happy to discuss. I think, I think if there's ideas and opportunities out there, then more than happy to listen to them. I think that, without getting too deeply into this one point, the hotels is a challenge. Got to be careful what I say here. They are quite expensive at times, and I get that. You know, I'm not averse to anybody making a living. That's what we all do. But quite often now people have got to book the Friday through to get the booking. It is quite expensive, and I think we'd have to be very aligned across a number of different sectors to make it attractive for people to stay that extra night. To be clear, I'm not saying the hotels are too expensive. I'm just saying that it is. I have friends who come from other parts of the country, and you know, they ask me where to stay because it can be hard to get bookings. So I guess the point I'm making is that I think that would be good, and it would be good to encourage people to stay longer. But it's going to take a lot of sort of alignment of very different sectors to try and make that happen. So maybe it is, something to do with the Friday and encouraging people to sort of not just come to the finish on Sunday, but come to the finish through the weekend, whatever those events sort of happen to be. Because I think we do see an awful lot of people now arrive on a Friday.
Yeah, and I think that's the first step in sort of your idea, really, is that bringing the Friday, trying to bring the Friday up first of all, and then I'd love to be in a position by the 50th Great North Run that we've actually managed to create an entire week of sport while we're shining the spotlight on the North East for the weekend of the Great North Run. If we could actually extend that to a week, it would be amazing. But we're just quite early stages of that at the moment.
Yeah.
So what we I won't say too much about it now, but what we are doing is we're working with the local authority on schools interaction and whether there's anything that we could do on the Friday with the local schools and that sort of thing as well. So it's very early stages, but there is, I guess the point I'm making is that there are discussions going on with the local authority about how do we do something on the Friday.
I was going to say, because I'd have thought that maybe after the race, after the Sunday, because obviously like, almost going to a wedding, it's all about the wedding, it's all about the race, it's the build up to the race. So you're obviously not going to come if you're doing the Great North Run and get obviously trashed on the Friday or the Saturday night. But obviously when you've done the race, you're relaxed, you're relieved, it's over, you're then going to be more sort of mindful to look at something else, maybe a few days camping, maybe go to another part of the North East, visit Northumberland, different areas, rather than just straight back, bang, go back to where you came from. Because once you've got the race over with, you can chill out, and then you're more likely to sort of stay a while, spend a bit more money, rather than just, I've got to keep myself right because it's Sunday I'm aiming for.
100% agree.
Yeah, okay.
Misha, got Victoria there. Come on. Guinness is totally fine though, right, the day before? Yeah?
It's actively encouraged.
Whatever works for you.
Yeah.
I think that was an amazing point that you made about making it longer. It's the school thing that's what would come to mind for me, so it might be that you'd have to change the date, but I know that early in September the kids aren't back to school, so that would be okay, but it would normally fall on the second week of September at the minute.
Typically,
yeah. What my thought was what Carl was talking about creating a route towards the ferry and the metro, but kind of closing off any other routes, because I think it would be kind of like herding cats, trying to get them to where they need to be. And then they could go to all the businesses, have these magic moments on the way, but you'd have to have a herding situation. I would think that would be an idea where they couldn't go any other way. They'd have to go to these places, and then they would meet all these spaces on the way.
I think there's two things there. I think you're right. Believe me, moving people is a hard thing. Even when roads are closed, it's hard to move people where you want them to be. So there would be a huge sort of logistical and safety thing to look at, but it's a fair point. I think the other point becomes how attractive is it for people to go, because it's about the communication with them of and the other point is actually a lot of people who come to the finish don't actually know where it is, if that makes sense. So actually, as long as the signage points them in the right direction, you probably don't have to physically corral them that way. But it's the other point on how attractive is it for them to go and do that. And I guess that's where, again, we'd sort of, not push it back to you guys, but say, look, what do you think would work? What would you like us to tell them? I mean, we're not pushing it entirely on you. It will work together, but we need that sort of engagement of, how do we attract, how do we pull them towards this?
To give you an idea, 58% of the entries come from outside of the North East region.
Yeah.
So not even outside of Newcastle, outside the North East.
Yeah.
These are people who really aren't familiar with.
No.
Some people don't even know where they finished.
No.
I'm totally
Yeah. Trying to find the metro when you're not from here, because it's nowhere near the metro or the ferry, really, are you? Like you've got to find it. So
we get asked quite often, where can I get a taxi?
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you know approximately what sort of percentage are at the finish?
Not off the top of my head, no. I mean, that 150 sort of believe would be in and around the final few miles of the race. Because of the route, you tend to get a lot of spectators at the start, but only for quite a short period, and then it's sort of it's less full as you go. We tend to get them all the way along, but the huge concentration is at the finish, and therefore the opportunity is at the finish. There's a lot of I mean, Nexus, I think, estimate there's 90,000 trips on the metro, and when you consider how many people are then getting the ferry, they're driving, so spectator numbers are really difficult to bottom out, obviously. So we do surveys and then we extrapolate. But it's a big lump. But it's like Dunkirk. It's a lot of people coming away at the end. So
Are you okay with all these questions? Are we all right?
Yeah.
Are we okay for time? Yeah.
Hello again. I actually work for the council. I'm on the carbon reduction and sustainability team. So we're obviously quite focused on things like the carbon footprint of the run, transport, you've mentioned, we've alluded several times to it. Have you explored opportunities around transport in terms of reducing the number of cars, which not only obviously emissions, but things like air pollution as well, which if you're running around huffing and puffing isn't ideal, but could we promote more use of e-bikes possibly? Have you looked at a route alongside the main run for spectators who might want to take in the sights, which I'm sure everyone agrees absolutely gorgeous, some of the cycleways. Have you looked at that, and possibly you could spread out some of the economic boost to pubs and hospitality along that route as well? I know you've probably all seen it in Newcastle as those drinking bikes go around, where very annoying, I'm sure, for the person on the front, but again, for people who are less mobile as well, it would give them the chance to travel in a sustainable way, and also they can take in the sights. Just a possibility of another way of moving away from cars whilst also finding more benefit in that?
Yeah. Sustainability is a huge piece of sort of our agenda at the minute. We're kind of formulating a more formal policy on it at the minute. We've dealt with some external consultancy. We've got our own internal sustainability team from across the business now, because it's a genuine major focus for us. And that's all part of the conversation that we're having at the minute. How do we sustainably move these people around? How do we give them the opportunities? I would caveat that by saying we are limited in certain things that we can influence or do. But I think part of that sustainability piece comes back to how do you encourage people to stay longer? So therefore, if you're going to have a drink, you're likely not to have your car, but you don't want to have a drink because you don't want to stand in the metro queue. So there's quite a delicate ecosystem there to manage. But I guess in answer to your original question, yeah, it is something. From this, what we're on June, from this point on, I spend an inordinate amount of time talking about transport. So it is something which we work closely with Nexus on, the bus companies as well, and the local authority on road closures and ferries, and just how we move all these people in a safe but appropriate way. So no doubt we will engage with your team at the council as well.
Oh yeah, I will call you after the talk, don't worry, to discuss more.
Okay, we're coming towards the end. Chris, do you have a question as well?
It's just a really quick one based on the back of when you said you want businesses to be engaged and see what we can bring. You talk about doing lots of surveys. I'm not sure if you're asking questions around the runners about what it is they would like to see as part of the run, what they want to get out of it, and is there a possibility you could share that with businesses so we can actually be creative ourselves and actually look at what do these customers want as they're walking past our businesses, and how do we attract them ourselves, basically. How do we empower ourselves basically to take a piece of the Great North Run?
Yeah, I mean, we do a post-race survey every year. We don't specifically ask sort of what do you want, but we ask them questions about what motivates them to do the run, how many people they're bringing with them, lots of things that inform what they want, basically. And we're very, very happy to either online or just to share the summary results from last year with the group. And if there's other questions that you think would be helpful for us to add to the survey, then that is possible to do.
That's what would make you stay longer.
Yeah.
Just one final thing I think we need to cover is the third sector involvement and how important it is to charities, and obviously we're hearing from local businesses there. Tell us all about it.
The Great North Run raises, it's hard to know the exact figure, but it's around 24-25 million pounds for a huge cross-section of charities. There's about 700 charities involved in the Great North Run. In lots of we try to make it as accessible as possible. So you've got the likes of Cancer Research and British Heart Foundation, who are huge national organisations. They are coming in and buying hundreds and hundreds of places and generating hundreds of thousands of pounds. But around 400 of the 700 charities are very small, local-based charities who maybe just buy up between 5 and 25 places for the event at the face value price, and are able to generate significant sums from them as well. So yeah, our charity policy is as broad as possible in order to cater for all different types of charities who want to be involved. And unfortunately there is a waiting list always still, so not every charity can get involved because the demand is so high. But there's a lady in my team who spends her entire year working with the charities and making sure they can maximise as much income as possible from the event.
I think, Nicky,
sorry,
correct me if I'm wrong, but I think in 19 the local charity raise was
About 4.5 million. Yeah, is for local northeast based charities.
Great stuff. And there's a charity village you mentioned earlier on.
Yes, so we have a charity village where about 90 of the bigger charities who want to actually engage with the runners post-event can come, and they offer all sorts of things from a cup of tea to a massage to a warm down. And I think they also see it as a big opportunity to try and collect people to do the direct debits to continue to raise money after they've raised money from raising the Great North Run. But the average person raises about £400 from running the Great North Run, which is something I'm quite proud of.
Yeah, good stuff. You can see all the passion in the room, right? Lots of questions, and really I'm sure you can get involved again. Maybe like you need a steering group. Yeah. Carl's the chair, clearly. Yeah. Any questions, Misha, online, or you can push things? I think we've got business@southtownside.gov.uk. Who's picking that up? Sarah, you having that one? You don't point to Lindsay. Yeah. So any other further questions you could do? You could direct to us. Yeah, direct them to.
Following up with information about the runners.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. Yeah, and we need to capture all these thoughts in the room. So yeah, that's probably the best way to do it. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for coming, and for Nicky and Gary.